Now let's cross live now to Caleb Maupin from the International Action Center to get more on this. Thank you for being with us here on RT. Now, how is the German government going to react to this latest scandal, do you think? I mean, what's the fallout going to look like, considering there's been so much about Germany and the NSA spying in the news?
Well, since the end of the Second World War, there's been an understanding between the Western powers, this kind of alliance, so to speak. But now, in the time of a global financial crisis, we're seeing that alliance be essentially pulled apart. In the struggle to control markets, we're seeing the United States alienate itself from so many of its former allies. The reality is that German banks are a growing source of competition to Wall Street, so there could be a break coming. What's the most interesting about this is the growing relationship between Germany and China. China is at the center of a global alliance of countries that are really breaking out of Wall Street's financial hold and developing independently, along with Russia, Venezuela, Iran, and other countries. So we're seeing a real division within the Western European powers and the United States, and it's a shocking trend.
Now, Germany is a very close ally. Why does the United States feel that it needs to spy on Germany and other allies, really?
Well, it shows a growing level of insecurity among the leading officials in the United States. They don't seem to really trust their allies. They seem to suspect that there may be discontent. And the reality is, with so many of the leaks that we've recently seen, so many countries that have historically worked with the United States are starting to wake up and say, wait, what are we getting out of this relationship? That seems to be something that's happening so much in so many different countries, whether it's the tapes recently released from Poland, which some of these memos that are coming out, everywhere it's happening that longtime allies of the U.S. are beginning to question what they're really getting out of this relationship. And that is something that I'm sure Obama and many others are very, very concerned about, because it's a real threat to U.S. power. For so long, especially since the collapse of the Soviet Union, geopolitics has really been defined by the United States being the center of the world economy and getting exactly what it wants. But that's changing. The geopolitical stage is drastically changing. And this is a real threat to Wall Street and their control of the markets. And the fact that Germany is getting closer to China and Russia and China are cooperating with each other, this is a real big game change in the field of global politics.
Now, you've mentioned this before about these other leaks. We've seen the U.S. was already caught spying on Chancellor Merkel, using her cell phone as the device, or as the method, if you will. How could this and other allegations affect relationships between the United States and Germany? Are they going to further deteriorate?
Well, I think they will, and I think, again, the root of that deterioration is really the fact that German banks are rising as a source of competition with Wall Street banks in the United States. But I mean, we've seen a clear lack of respect, and that's been communicated. While diplomacy is often the language of officials speaking very politely and shaking hands and all that, behind the scenes there's a real distrust and a real disrespect. And the fact that the NSA is spying, that all kinds of in the back room, there's real tension between the United States and its allies, and that's the reality. And the countries that have lockstepped and marched behind the United States for so long, and this kind of global alliance of countries that kind of obey the United States, that's coming apart, and we're seeing that it's falling apart. And the fact that the U.S. is getting so desperate in these financial times may be the source of that division.
All right, appreciate your thoughts on the subject. Caleb Maupin from the International Action Center, thank you very much for being with us here on RT.